Next up, we're going to have our Empowerment Through Alternative Medicine panel discussion. And first up, we have Dr. Ashley Biscoe, a naturopathic doctor and co-founder of Attune Functional Medicine, focuses on complex health issues using a drug-free approach. She launched Help for HS, an online resource for hidradenitis suppurativa, and brings a wealth of experience from public health and community education. A big, big round of applause for Dr. Ashley Biscoe. All right, and we're not going to leave Dr. Ashley up here by herself with just me, because that might be a little dangerous. We're going to bring up Dr. Tracy Kimbali, known as the Wound Wizard. She is a board-certified wound specialist and general surgeon. She leads the WISH Clinic and has extensive experience in wound management, previously directing wound management services for End-of-Age Greater Colorado PACE, and is pursuing an MBA in healthcare and executive leadership. A large round of applause for Dr. Tracy Kimbali. Come on up and join the party. And last but certainly not least, we have Dr. Stephen Dave Louie. He's an associate professor and program director at Wayne State University with a focus on complex medical dermatology, including hidradenitis suppurativa. He serves on multiple boards and committees and has a growing body of dermatological publications residing in Windsor, Ontario. Come on up here now. All right. How is everyone feeling? I think we might have to share mics, okay? So I'm going to get here right into our first question. And the first question here is, can each of you briefly introduce yourself and explain your background in alternative medicine and how it relates to treating HS? And we can just go this way.
Okay. So happy to be here. Again, I'm Dr. Ashley Biscoe. I am a naturopathic doctor. I got into this work really through my own health challenges. I was someone that struggled with acne throughout adolescence and even into my early college studies. I had headaches and digestive issues, and all the doctors told me I was healthy. They couldn't find anything wrong, and I didn't want to accept that. And I went down some research rabbit holes, learned that the body was actually designed to be self-healing, and there are things that can get in the way. So I was just fascinated by that, and I took steps to help resolve my own health issues. Then I learned that naturopathic medicine was a thing, that you can actually go to a naturopathic medical program and help patients who want a holistic solution to their wellness. And so I did that, and I learned about hidradenitis suppurativa when I was in naturopathic medical school, and there was something about this condition that just tugged at my heart, the pain, the suffering that I saw, and I could see that there were so few treatment options in conventional medicine, and I knew that naturopathic medicine would have so much to offer. So I decided, even as a student, that I was going to dedicate a part of my practice to trying to understand this condition as best as I could, and so that's what I do.
Hi, I'm Dr. Tracy Kimball. I actually am a general surgeon. I am the executive chairwoman of WISH Skin Labs, which is actually a biopharmaceutical innovator that's creating topical innovations, leveraging the benefits of hemp and CBD, CBG, and CBC, and terpenes to actually affect 3 pillars of efficacy, which is pain, inflammation, and biofilm or dysbiosis or sepsis. And so I was actually introduced to hidradenitis in medical school. I did not go and become a dermatologist. I became a general surgeon and landed in wound care 12 years ago out of my training, and was introduced to hidradenitis during my experiential journey in wound care. And when I decided to go back to school and get my master's in business, I actually took a healthcare innovations course, and the teacher was a son of a cannabinoid business strategist, and ultimately landed on CBD as the solution for those 3 pillars of problems in hidradenitis, seemingly suffers, or the skin suffers because of those three problems: inflammation, pain, and sepsis or biofilm. And so we're on a journey to discover a new innovation for patients with early stage disease. We're creating Cutanecy, which is a cutaneous panacea, and in hopes to bring a new solution that's steroid-free, THC-free, and cannabinoid-forward and terpenoid-forward focused topical innovation. So I'm here to share an experience in that, and would love to have an open conversation and dialogue with my colleagues and peers here and you as the audience about what your needs are and what questions you have about cannabinoid medicine and how it will affect your skin.
Well, we're going to ask about that. Thank you.
And I'm Dr. Steve Dave Louie. I'm a medical doctor and dermatologist. I did my training in medical school and residency right here at Wayne State, and I practiced in Detroit. I got into HS just like Ashley because there was a need. My patients were suffering, and people around me didn't know what to do next, so I said, all right, I got to be the one who figures it out. And then I got into what I call integrative dermatology, which is sort of the Western side, which I love, my traditional training, but also bringing in more naturopathy and mind-body medicine and sort of the complementary medicine by doing a 9-month certificate program with a company called Learn Skin, who they're fantastic for integrative dermatology stuff. And I loved it. It's been a very personal learning experience, and I've made a lot of life changes for myself, and it's opened whole new doors for me to have conversations with my patients and to sort of combine naturopathic things with more traditional Western things and kind of bring it all together.
We love that. Wow, we're about to have some great conversation. I'm so excited. Y'all excited? Yeah. All right, so the first question is, how can alternative medicine practices be integrated with traditional Western medical treatments for HS? Are there any specific examples or case studies you can share?
I think one thing I'd like to say, and this might be controversial, but I actually don't consider what I do alternative. I think what I do is foundational. To say alternative implies that a person has to first start with traditional or conventional therapies, and then if that doesn't work, then try so-called alternatives. But naturopathic medicine is so strongly rooted in basic science. I feel that every person would benefit from a naturopathic doctor and a medical doctor. A naturopathic doctor is going to understand you as a person, not just from the emotional side of things, but we are understanding the interconnectedness of your body's systems. We're looking at your nutritional status, your hydration, your digestion. We're looking for all of those deeper root causes of inflammation. So in thinking about combining naturopathic or natural medicine with conventional therapies, everything is going to work better when your body is set up for success, when you have the lowest inflammatory burden possible, when you have the best nutrition status that you can achieve, when your blood sugar is balanced, right? When we support the foundations of your very basic health, which is what naturopathic medicine does, everything else works better. If you're having surgery, you need to have, we talked about the zinc and copper and vitamin C, all of those cofactors for appropriate wound healing. I always think of it as not necessarily an either or, but a both. And I do have patients that are not comfortable with conventional treatments. I try to meet people where they are. But I think definitely, in my mind, it's not alternative. It really is strongly rooted in the basic science and physiology. I probably didn't give a specific example, but I'll let.
Oh, no, we love it. You did a great job.
Well, I think I can certainly bring the use case. So the Wish Clinic in Arvada was built on the principles of foundational medicine and wanting to remove barriers of healing, understanding that the human body is programmed, genetically programmed. It doesn't matter what your diversity is or your epigenetics, you're genetically programmed to heal itself. And where we find the challenge in chronic wound healing is that there are barriers that are preventing those genetic programs to work effectively. So glycemic control, diabetics have problems healing wounds, chronic inflammation, any skin disorders that we deal with that are dealing, that we are challenged with or trying to thrive with are suffering because of this chronic inflammatory entropic cycle. And so it's my job, I am an allopathic physician who is now dipping her toe on the alternative, if we have to use that word, but complementary and integrative medicine side of things, realizing that we were taught incorrectly. And I will say that with full transparency, that we were misguided in school to not really build on a foundational background that we need to remove these barriers, and we don't need to use synthetic pharmaceuticals to do that. And so I think what we're doing in Colorado is a use case for blending complementary medicine principles, foundational principles that naturopathic medicine physicians are taught to employ, and providing access eventually, hopefully, through the FDA process, will provide access to a natural-based solution that is not pharmaceutically created in a lab or synthetically created, and that essentially is what we call Mother Nature's gift. And so we always say, Father Time may heal all wounds, but Mother Nature does it better.
Come on now. Come on, Mother Nature. I like that.
Hence the green. Green is my favorite color. And hey, it's all about the branding, right?
All right now, don't get started.
And I love what you both said, especially what you were saying, Ashley, because that to me is one of the important things, is to find providers who don't sort of shun the other world. It's best if you have both. I think we all know in HS, we need every solution we can get. We're not turning our back on anything that could help right now because there's no magic bullet right now. There's no one-size-fits-all treatment. So you've got to be willing to try everything out that has reasonable evidence and a chance of working. And so I think that's one of the things I tell people to really look for is, back in the olden days, and we're getting better about this, there was definitely a us and them thing. You know, you went to your Western physician and they were like, oh, your naturopath, they're crunchy granola, don't listen to them. Then you go to your naturopath and they're like, oh, your regular doctor is giving you poison, don't listen to them. And now I'm so happy that we're seeing the two come closer together and learn from each other and do scientific research together to show, like, all right, you have this treatment, it works. And it's surprising how many of the Western medicines come from plants. You know, when you actually trace it back, a lot of these are plant remedies that we've just now found a way to really efficiently manufacture them instead of grinding things up with a mortar and pestle. So we need to acknowledge that even our treatments, a lot of them are natural treatments, just packaged differently. And so I'm so excited for the worlds to come together because I think there are so many ways they can complement each other, and hopefully we'll get into a lot of them.
Oh, yeah, if I could just add, I was going to mention too that I think there is a misconception that naturopathic medicine means natural. That's not necessarily true. Naturopathic doctors are trained to the scope of primary care physicians. Our training is nearly identical to that of a medical doctor. We're trained in the physiology, the biochemistry, pharmacology. Depending on the state where a naturopathic doctor practices, they may prescribe medications. So sometimes using a pharmaceutical or surgical intervention is naturopathic when it's done in the right context. We do try to prioritize the most gentle, non-invasive approaches first to help facilitate that inherent, ordered, intelligent, self-healing force that we all have within our bodies. But I always want to point out that naturopathic doctors are different because of the way we think and because of our philosophy, not necessarily because of natural therapies.
I love that, and I love that you were able to bring that up because we kind of talked about that because I was explaining to her that I am on a medicine, but I also have been doing some natural things that I think have been, you know, coming together and making us one big happy family and treating this thing. So I'm glad that you got a chance to speak about that. So let's talk about some of the benefits and risks. What are the primary benefits and potential risks of using alternative medicine approaches such as acupuncture, herbal remedies, or indigenous healing practices for managing HS?
I think there's so many benefits to natural therapies. We were just talking over lunch about botanical medicine and the pharmacology of the constituents of those herbs and how they have these therapeutic benefits. Natural medicine can be accessible because a lot of it is nutrition and lifestyle. So I love that that can be somewhat of a self-empowerment tool if a person comes across information and they're able to implement these recommendations on their own. I guess to answer the other part of the question, some of the risks or possible harms, you know, when it comes to things like nutrition supplements and herbs, that industry is unregulated. It's like the Wild West. And so a lot of people don't know ago that it's kind of Scout's honor when it comes to whether what's on the label, if it actually matches what's in the bottle. There have been case reports of people getting selenium poisoning because there was 10,000 times more selenium in the pill versus what was on the label. And so there are a handful of professional manufacturing companies that have very strict quality control standards. These are more practitioner-grade supplements. But I will say it's easy to fall into the DIY trap. I was also thinking about some of the lectures earlier today, and I'm all about gut health and treating infections and all of that, but what if you're constipated? You can make yourself sicker if you start killing gut infections and you're releasing all of these microbial toxins into your unhealthy gut. It's getting into your bloodstream. You gotta be pooping first, and we gotta figure that out. So there are a lot of nuances and subtleties that can go wrong when you do try to DIY, but I think the benefit is that these therapies are generally safe for a lot of people, and they are accessible, and they can be highly effective.
Yeah, I think our system has generated, I'm going to speak more to the risk side of things because I think we all know that the benefits are there. But the risk, I think, is definitely in supply chain and the political environment. I think it's just a misalignment and unawareness of the safety of farming practice and manufacturing practice and commercialization and labeling and marketing. And so there's a lot of cleanup that needs to happen in, I'm specifically talking about the cannabis, both the cannabis regulated and unregulated CBD hemp farming world, but things that I experienced personally in my own supply chain journey is that we wanted a specific organically grown, natural sun-grown hemp input, and we went to what we thought was vetted by the USDA as organic and used their inputs to create our botanical blend, and come to find out after third-party testing there were pesticides. And so that was during our beta prototyping stage of our first product, Emerald, which is sitting in front of me. It's a diaper rash cream. And realized that even our own federal authorities and regulatory bodies are missing things, and it could have just been from pesticide drift or acid rain, and so we had intrinsically created or selected a more natural way of growing a plant, but that still introduced the risks, which were contaminants, and so therefore it's forced our hand to then find alternative source of our inputs that are going to likely be more regulated, more lab grown, not necessarily lab grown, but internally indoor grown growing scenario, because we're going to have less risk for pesticide drift, acid rain, heavy metal poisoning of the terrestrial water source. But unfortunately, that kind of goes against our ethos because we wanted to be a sustainable company. We wanted to use and have more control on water and energy consumption because indoor growing is significantly earth unfriendly, I should say. Kind of the risk benefits there from a sustainability conversation and a supply chain conversation. But the bottom line is that there's still a lot of lift to do and work to do to clean it up before we can put it in safely in the hands of the public.
And then when it comes to risks and benefits, I like to look for studies for things. Not to say that there always has to be a study, because a lot of times the way we figure things out is somebody with HS starts taking a supplement or an herb for something else, and they go, that helped my HS. They tell somebody else, they do it, and all of a sudden we catch on, and then we do the study. So there is, sometimes earlier on, there can be sort of hints and things, so as long as these things are sort of known to be safe to use, safe to take, then you can kind of try it out if you've heard, but I really like to recommend things after there's been at least some studies done. So I put together a little handout for everybody, and we're going to make sure we get it all out to you, so you don't have to memorize all the doses, and I won't dive into the details, but you'll have them all. And then it's got a little bit about mind-body medicine, because hopefully we can talk about that, because that's huge too, and a little bit on nutrition. So the ones that have been studied in HS specifically are vitamin D. If your vitamin D is low, bringing it back up to normal has been shown to help some people's HS get better. So have somebody check your vitamin D and then make sure you're getting it normalized. Vitamin B12 in a few patients has been shown to be helpful for HS, so that's something that you could consider. Zinc has been considered or been studied in HS and can be helpful. again, everything in HS is a little bit hit or miss. Is it going to work for you? Is it not? But for some people, it's helpful. One of the sort of risks of zinc is that zinc and copper compete in your body for their carrier. So if you start taking more zinc, you can get depleted in your copper. So it's in the handout too, but if you're taking extra zinc to kind of help your HS, you may need to take a little bit of copper with it so your copper doesn't get low. And then turmeric. We haven't really studied turmeric in HS, but it's been one that in patient surveys they've reported that there's some benefits. So hopefully studies are going to come, and we know that it can help psoriasis, it can help eczema, it's anti-inflammatory, it's an antioxidant, it's good for you anyway. So it's one of those things that's kind of on the horizon as maybe something beneficial. And then cannabinoids are another one that a lot of HS patients have reported have been helpful for their pain, for their inflammation. So there are studies out there that have shown some of these things can be beneficial in HS, and I love to introduce them. I check all my patients' vitamin D at the first visit, especially because living in Detroit, a lot of people are vitamin D deficient. We have zero sunshine for big parts of the year, and unless you're supplementing, you're probably not getting your D.
Nice. So how do you all incorporate both, like the conventional medicine with the alternative medication when you're dealing with your patients and creating a plan for them that is personal to what they're dealing with?
Yeah, so in the state of Colorado, I don't prescribe. Every state has a different scope of practice for naturopathic doctors. But I do a thorough workup for each patient, and I'm always asking what medications they're taking or what specific treatments they're getting. That way I'm in the loop about possible interactions that I need to be aware of. And not just harmful interactions, but there can be beneficial interactions. Most medications deplete some nutrient, one or more, and so we can help to enhance the levels of any nutrient depletions. There are also certain botanicals or nutrition supplements that can improve the benefits of a pharmaceutical intervention. So I'm always looking at what are they already doing, how can we support them around this, and then of course, if necessary, because I love lab work, I'm always doing comprehensive lab testing. I'm like a kid on Christmas when the results come back. I'm like, what did we find? But sometimes I do see more serious red flags, and then I need to refer them to a specialist to see if they have something more serious going on or just for deeper workup. So.
Thank you.
Do you want to go?
Sure. I kind of do a little bit of both. So I can sometimes combine the Western medicine with some of the supplements, the things that I kind of look to the literature and see that there's evidence for. But I don't have as extensive experience and knowledge as a naturopath, so sometimes I will refer patients, especially if they're interested in going that route. Because honestly, you know, it's getting better, but there's the old thing where the patient comes in, you're like, all right, you got to do this and this, and they're like, isn't there just a pill for this? I mean, let's be real, Ozempic is kind of resurging that. Like, I don't want to do anything, just give me that thing so I can lose weight. But there's a lot of people now who are saying, no, I want to be healthy. I want to balance my system out. I want to know what's my optimal health. I'm interested in really getting my physiology back in balance, which is great. I think it's good that we're kind of pushing away from the just give me a pill to help me know how to get things better. So I have enough knowledge to at least have the conversations, and then I can refer people out if I say, you know what, you might benefit more from traditional Chinese medicine or Ayurveda or a naturopath who can dive even deeper into these things, or functional testing too. Like in our Western world, we don't do a lot of functional testing, which is like looking at your stool, looking at all the great tests that get Ashley excited and get me excited too, but I just don't incorporate them as much. So I think that's where it's nice to be able to walk lockstep with people and work together on things. And really even I always make sure that I create a space where my patients feel comfortable telling me about their supplements. Because I know sometimes you're afraid to sort of tell your Western doctor that you're doing anything complementary or naturopathic because they might react negatively and say, oh, don't do that, it's not good for you, blah, blah, blah. So I always make sure I create that space where you can tell me, you know, do you take any herbs or supplements? And, you know, are you interested in any herbs or supplements? Because we can talk about some other ones that might be beneficial.
Yeah, I think for me, it's always just taking the person-centered approach and making sure I'm listening. I always ask the question, what if you tried and what has failed? I don't ask the question, what has worked first? Because as I was telling Ashley at lunch, I feel like the patients are self-selecting that come to us that have not been given the answers by traditional medicine. For wound healing, at least. I mean, the concept for me and cannabinoids only came to me about a couple years ago during that experience at school. But doing the research, this literature has been out there since, ancient times. I mean, the Egyptians even used poultice and herbs to actually treat patients. And so it's, again, decolonializing the messaging, listening to patients, being open-minded as an allopath to alternative complementary therapies, but then doing my own research because I'm, postgraduate medical professional. I've been out of medical school for 25 years now, and I'm just really, again, learning about stuff that I didn't even get taught. And so I feel like my passion project is to continue not only to educate the public and the layperson about these medicines, but also my own peers, and decommissioning sort of the blinders that have been placed, and talk about the endocannabinoid system, and that this is actually a functional system in our bodies as humans that interface and create, and then have an enzymatic ligand and chemical pathway that's programmed genetically to create homeostasis in our bodies. And so I just learned about this, believe it or not, 2.5 years ago. So it's kind of crazy to know that, but building awareness, and that's how I am missioned to integrate allopathic Eastern and Western philosophies for medical care.
Love that. I loved how you talk about empowering, because I, as an HS patient, I'm listening to everything you all are saying, some great things, and I'm thinking about all of the things I've heard today. And I think as a person that has it, I've heard so many things. I've had to figure out so many things on my own, and now I'm being given so much information. What role does the patient play in all of this, and what is your advice to someone that is taking this information that they're getting from this panel and just this weekend and applying it to some of the methods and methodologies that you're talking about?
I want to make sure I understand the question. So what role does the patient play?
Yeah, like what role, like if someone's coming to you for the first time, or someone that has been dealing with HS for years and they've finally have the knowledge and the tools to say, hey, I kind of want to try this. I heard this at a conference. Like, what is that process like for the patient?
Well, I ask every new patient, what are you hoping to accomplish in your first visit with me? Because I think that first impression matters a lot. And sometimes they'll say, I want to know what labs I should order, or they'll get a game plan together, whatever that means for them. And then I always ask, if you could wave a magic wand and get rid of any 3 of your problems, what would those be? Because that tells me where their top pain points and frustrations are. And that's what I need to be focused on, because that is what's most important to them. And then I also like to ask, what are your goals? And then we sit down in that first visit and we're talking about the goals, we're going over their medical history and all of those factors. And I like to set expectations for what this process is going to look like together. I believe in not buying into limiting beliefs. I know that we aren't using the word cure right now, but I believe that that is not impossible, and I don't want to limit what is possible. If we say there's never going to be a cure, then there won't. I just think we haven't figured it out yet. And so I choose to believe with my patients, and I do the best that I can to support them in whatever their goals are. I'm asking about, like you said, what have you tried? What worked? What was a failure? What was somewhat helpful? That can help to aid the diagnosis. I do a lot of education. I want every patient to understand how their body works, just how the human body works in general, because there are some common determining factors that we all need to be in balance in order to be well. We all need clean air and even good breathing. I do a lot of sleep study referrals. That's a whole other topic, but breathing and oxygenation, hydration, digestion and assimilation. How's the structural integrity of the body? Sometimes I'm referring to chiropractic or physical therapy. And we just kind of go from head to toe with all of these foundations. What's your occupation? Are you exposed to toxic chemicals at work? A lot of my autoimmune patients have significant chemical exposures. We know from the medical research those are immune system irritants. So I'm looking for as many sources of inflammation as possible, whether that's a chemical exposure, heavy metals, intestinal dysbiosis from bacterial toxins, or even fungal overgrowth. We were talking at lunch. I have found a huge fungal connection to HS. And so once I have kind of an idea of what could be the big triggers for this person, I'm going to do an advanced diagnostic workup to confirm or rule out what I'm suspecting. And then we work together in a comprehensive treatment plan to address all of those issues. Sometimes it's a nutritional tweak to support blood sugar changes and or gut health. Sometimes we need to change how a person is sleeping. If the person isn't sleeping, why? Is there a circadian mismatch because of poor sleep hygiene, meaning like you're scrolling and there's blue light in your face before bed, or is there neuroinflammation because you have some toxic exposure? All of that matters, and so these are the details that get my brain excited. And as Dr. Oha said, I want to know why. I'm less interested in what you have and way more interested in why you have it. So
That's beautiful.
Empowering patients. There's a lot of information, and I think the biggest thing that I can do to help patients accept that is just continue to instill hope and be, again, open to listening and letting them ask the question, and less me ask the question, and not being the one asking the question. So giving them answers, giving them hope, and then also steering them and guiding them to the highest quality of knowledge and evidence, so that they are building a repertoire of information that's based on scientific fact and isn't contaminated with just extraneous marketing.
And then the other thing that I think is a really big role for the patient to be empowered in their journey is to really figure out if this is the right provider for you. So I'm very excited for the day when every doctor knows what HS is and knows how to treat it. And through the great work of the HS Foundation and our partners, the AHSID, HS Connect, all our awesome influencers spreading the word, we're going to get there. But the reality right now is, and you guys, all of you in the audience who have HS know, when you walk in to see a new provider, first it's like, do they even know what this is? Do they even know anything about it? So you're kind of doing your mental checklist. If you can, get connected through the HS Foundation's Clinic Finder or the HS Connect Doctor Locator to find someone who you know knows about it. That's fantastic. Then that's already out of the way. But in the meantime, you're trying to figure out, does this person know HS? Do they know what they're talking about? And I'll say this, not everybody is an HS expert right now. But if they're willing to learn, that's huge. So if you're having that conversation with your doctor and you go, well, I read up on this, and they go, well, I don't know about that. Let's talk about something else. But if they go, interesting, I'm going to go back and research and read up on that, and let's talk about it again, that is great. Because that way, you can kind of work together on this, because we know you're doing your research. Mm-hmm. I know my HS patients are out there looking things up. They're bringing in articles. They're bringing in posts that they've seen, and I love it, because I'm like, yes, let's learn together. And so I think that's huge, too, is finding that doctor who's willing to work with you and to listen and to care about what you want to do and how you want to treat it, and not just say, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're really trying to do a very shared decision-making model in medicine where we work together. What are your goals for your treatment? Not everybody has gotten the message as much as others. And we've got all our crazy time constraints and busy clinics and everything. But I think that's a really good thing too, is finding that right provider who's going to work with you, and then finding accurate information. So, going through reliable sources. I love that people are very willing to share things online, but sometimes there's things where they mean well, but it might be something that's not safe, like put bleach directly on your skin. No, don't. So really finding those reliable sources. So things you can trust like the HS Foundation, HS Connect, who are vetting the information and really trying to make things available. There's also, if you guys haven't heard, hspatientguide.com is like we took the book, we made a textbook of HS, everything we know, and then we said, all right, let's translate it into language that normal people can understand instead of medical language, and it's free to anyone. So if you go to hspatientguide.com, lots of great info, and if you sort of bring that up with your doctor too, like I found this on the hspatientguide.com, it was written by physicians, maybe they'll be even a little more willing to say, oh, okay, well, let's talk a little bit more about that then.
I love that. Sounds like it needs to be a lot more partnership between the patient and the physicians these days. So we're gonna talk about some practical applications. Can any of you, if possible, share some practical applications of alternative medicine techniques that attendees can easily incorporate into their daily routines to manage HS symptoms?
That's a loaded question. There's
It
so
is.
many.
Listen, I know you about to have a fun time with this one.
Multiple tools. Well, naturopathic medicine is all about the foundations, all about the basics. And I know that it sounds simple, and sometimes we think that a solution or something effective has to be really complex. And yeah, there is a lot of complexity to the body, but there's also so much simplicity about what it needs to run efficiently and what things are irritating. And so I just educate all of my patients really on the basics. We talk about setting a healthy sleep schedule. I think Dr. Oha even talked about this. Dr. Hamzavi talked a lot about the immune system. The immune system is very intimately linked with our sleep schedule. We have certain types of T cells that help with immune system regulation, and they're only active during the dark hours of the night. I also think about from a metabolic standpoint, it's been found that just one night of sleep deprivation or poor quality sleep can set us up for insulin resistance for the next 2 weeks. So that's kind of a scary thing. I don't know that any of us ever have perfect diet or sleep schedules, but just understanding that those little things really do matter. And we have this concept, I keep talking about naturopathic philosophy, but we have this concept called the total load. So if you imagine your body as a bucket, when your bucket is full and it's spilling over, those are symptoms. The symptoms is like your system is overwhelmed, it's spilling over. What fills up your bucket are the stressors. And so the sleep deprivation, the nutrient depletion, high blood sugar because we haven't been eating properly or because we're not sleeping well, toxins from either chemical exposures or other environmental exposures. And so the more of those variables we can mitigate in healthy ways, the more we can pour out that stress bucket, and all of those are going to have impacts on how our immune system is behaving. I like what Dr. Oha said about the plate, filling half with vegetables, focusing on clean protein, maybe a little bit of high quality starch from whether it's rice or beets or carrots or something like that, and then some healthy fat. So those are really, I think, powerful drivers. I also educate a lot about avoiding, or I should say reducing your exposure to environmental chemicals as much as possible. So being mindful of the types of beauty and personal care products that we're using. That's a big one because we know that a lot of those chemicals are very immunotoxic. They have not really been studied for safety, and we know that there is a synergistic effect. So when those chemicals are combined, it's not just 1 + 1 = 2, it's 1 + 1 = 10,000. And again, the research is there, but there's a disconnect between what we know from research and what is standard of care in practice.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was really great. Repeat the question again. So what are some practical
Yes.
things to use?
Practical applications of alternative medicine techniques that attendees can easily incorporate into their daily routine to manage HS symptoms.
One thing that isn't really talked a lot about for skin care is pH. So that's either the acidity or the alkalinity of the skin environment. At baseline, natural, normal, healthy skin sits at around 5.5, 5.3, and that's on the acidic level. And so really, funny enough, just vinegar and water and anything, or citric acid, things that can actually help bring that skin pH closer to that normal range is a very practical, very cheap, chicken soup for the soul type of remedy that can help with cleansing the skin. Other things, we were talking about the use of Manuka honey, and I believe that is a sponsor of the foundation or the meeting. But honey is a natural remedy. It's this specific proprietary compound that Manuka Med creates is they're harvesting honey from a very indigenous or an indigenous honeybee in New Zealand and Australia that actually pollinate the Manuka flower, and there's specific compounds, not to go into the chemistry of that, but there are specific compounds found in that honey that actually are working with the skin to invigorate the natural healing process and to suppress the negative humors that are going on when you have chronic inflammation and dysbiosis. So that's another natural remedy and practical remedy. Would you go and get non-medical grade honey off the grocery store shelf? The answer is no. But through these companies that are creating medical grade honey, then you will have the tool to actually help mitigate some of those barriers of healing while you're suffering from draining and infiltrating and scarring stages of disease.
Now, where do we get these bees or this honey?
They live in Australia, New Zealand.
Okay, so we need to take a trip over there.
Yes, we certainly do.
Okay, because I'm liking the sound of that.
I have two very practical things that all HS patients can put into application right now. One is we know HS is stressful, and there's a mind-body connection where stress can then trigger more inflammation, like Ashley was saying. When you get stressed out, your body goes under physiologic changes. It shifts to the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight, and that releases stress hormones that then impact your immune system. So to fight that stress piece, what you can do is some breathing techniques. So one of my favorites is the 4-7-8. You inhale for a count of 4, and it doesn't have to be seconds. I usually use my heartbeat, and then you hold it for a count of 7, and then you exhale out of your mouth for a count of 8. And whenever you exhale longer than you're inhaling, it calms your body down. So say you're getting ready to go out, you're looking good, and you get some drainage. And instantly your heartbeat goes up, you're so stressed out, you're thinking my night is ruined, so you just go, all right, in for 4. Hold 7, and out for 8. And you can repeat that 3 or 4 times. If you do it twice a day, morning and evening, it helps you to get into the practice, and then you use it whenever you need it. And it's just a quick way to say, all right, stress, you are not going to change my body's physiology right now. I'm going to dampen you down, calm you down. Good thing is there's no side effects from it. Everybody can do breathing techniques. So that's the nice 4-7-8. The other recommendation is we've been talking a lot about the bacteria that lives on our skin. The best way to have healthy bacteria on your skin is to go touch plants. Be out in nature. We're actually meant to be in nature and to be touching plants and soil. And so if you can spend, it seems like a long time, but if you can figure out to spend about 10 to 30 minutes a day touching some plants, it's great. So you can walk barefoot, you can sit in the grass, you can go to the park and lean up against a tree, but getting your skin against a plant. If you live in a city, bring in some house plants. And when you're sitting doing stuff, just kind of be touching your plant or rub it, have it sitting close enough to your couch that it can kind of touch on you. And that bacteria, healthy bacteria from the plant, transfers over to your skin. And there's more and more studies showing that being out in nature and touching plants is good for us. So anytime you can, walk barefoot. Just be careful it's not poison ivy. But otherwise, get out there and touch those plants. Get a few different house plants at home. Put a flower in your hair. And then you've got all this nice bacteria just cruising down your neck and getting in your face and maybe your mouth. So get out there and touch some plants.
I am about to go scrub every tree I can outside.
Yeah.
Between that and the calmness, I was about to take a nap, but now I want to run outside and play with some plants.
Well, I was going to say, no wonder that's the longevity of my family, because that's all we are. They're hunters and gatherers. So I'm a city girl, city mouse, but I actually come from a country background. So, but yeah, nature, that makes a lot of sense.
Wow,
Good
I
job.
love that. Maybe when we go to get the bees from Australia, we can play
There
with
you
some
go.
plants. All right, sound like we going on a field trip.
Did I not say Mother Nature does it better?
Listen, you did. You said it. You coined it at the beginning of this. Wow, this is amazing. It's crazy you said something about mind-body connection because that was the next question. It says, how does the mind-body connection influence the effectiveness of alternative medicine in treating HS? Are there specific practices such as meditation or yoga that you recommend? I know you kind of just talked about some of those too.
Yeah, so I love those simple breathing techniques. Also, this is the best time for mind-body medicine that we've ever had. There are tons of apps. I put a bunch of apps in the handout that are free that you can get that will help you with guided meditations, help you to understand stress better and manage that stress. And I always make sure when I bring it up in clinic with my patients, I say, look, I'm not giving up. I'm treating your HS. But in the meantime, I also want to talk about the way it impacts you. Because if I just come out of the gate and go, let's talk about meditation, they're like, well, wait, no, let's fix my HS first. Like, don't just tell me to meditate it away. So I say this is in addition to getting it under control, let's talk about the stress. Let's talk about things you can do. So there's some great free apps out there that can help kind of introduce you, and they can be short times. Like some of them you can say, I want a 3-minute meditation, and it'll just walk you through because you can really change your body's function by calming it down and switching it into that calm part of the nervous system instead of that stressed out part. And throughout the ages, we have this stressed out part, so that way if like a tiger's about to attack us, we freak out and we run away from it. But we don't have a lot of tigers attacking us. But we have all this other stress that's triggering that part of our body and our nervous system, and we just live in this stressed out state. So with training and with doing these mindfulness meditations and breathing techniques, you can teach your body to get out of the stress mode and switch back over more quickly. I think we've all seen that person who like just never gets stressed. They go through life and like nothing gets to them. My favorite saying about that is there's these statues of the Buddha in Japan, and there's these big statues, and he's always smiling. Whether it's raining, it's snowing, it's sunny, it's windy, the Buddha's always smiling because he doesn't let the world around him impact him. He chooses his happiness, and with practice, you can kind of buffer that stress response and teach yourself to calm down a little bit. It's okay to get stressed out sometimes. It's going to happen. But it's another muscle you can kind of build is that stress response muscle. And like I said, there's so many resources now that you can do yourself. And then if you're interested, there's courses. Specifically with HS, we know that there's a lot of shame and blame involved. And so self-compassion can be really powerful. We are so hard on ourselves. And so we beat ourselves up. We tell ourselves, I'm not beautiful, I'm not worthy, I'm not sexy, no one's ever gonna love me, I'll never date anybody because all these things are going on with me. And so if your friend was saying all that, you would sit there and go, stop. You are wonderful, you're a great person, someone's gonna love you, someone is gonna be so lucky to have you in their life, you have so much to offer. Why don't we say that to ourselves? And so it's that practice of like saying like, all right, pretend you're talking to a friend who's going through this, and now why don't you treat yourself as good as you would treat your friends? So there's so many great mind-body techniques out there. I really encourage you to explore them and check them out.
And don't forget the somatosensory access. So, I mean, using music therapy and during your, meditation might be great in a quiet space to learn to enjoy the quiet and learn to perfect silencing the noise. And the noise, I'm saying proverbially, is everything that's hyper-stimulatory to the body. But music and binaural beats, and there's tons of content out there that's free. Just turning that on when you're brushing your teeth in the morning, or and maybe setting it up on an auto timer, or set your phone to use a more a ringtone that's actually, just think about constant stimulation that could be just tweaked a little bit to give you that frequency of calming and music therapy that's happening ambiently. That's essentially subconscious at that point, because you're going about your day, and that is a different environment in which you're existing in.
Love that. Okay, you wanna?
Oh, yeah. I'll speak briefly. I love what you've said about self-compassion, self-love. We have had a couple of patients at our clinic that just had mental blocks with implementing the treatment plan. They have the information and the tools, And there was one woman in particular, and this was with my colleague, and she asked, well, what do you think the disconnect is? What do you think is stopping you? And the patient said, well, I guess I just don't think I deserve it, right? So there can be these, deeply seated, and sometimes it's the result of a past trauma. Sometimes we really have to do the inner work to figure that out. From a practical standpoint, there are certain botanicals that can help to lift our mood. That's kind of a mind-body. So things like oat, Avena sativa, that's a very calming botanical that works on the nervous system. And then lemon balm, or Melissa officinalis, the keynote for that botanical is that it brings joy to the heart. So there are botanicals that can have effects on our mood. I also wanted to mention there's a great book called Psychocybernetics. It's written by Dr. Maxwell Maltz, and this is an old book. He was a plastic surgeon, but I always share this with patients. He observed that a subset of his surgery patients healed very quickly, and he called them rapid healers. And when he went back to try and figure out what made them different, they all had a purpose and a why. They all had some big reason that they needed to get well quickly. They would say, I've got this big work project, I gotta get back out there, or my wife needs me to do X, Y, and Z, I can't just be here laying around. The rapid healers had a big why, and so I have advised patients to just sit and reflect on, why do you wanna be well? What is your why? What does that look like? Sometimes we're motivated by gaining something. Sometimes we're motivated by avoiding something. Decide what that is for you, and latch on to that bigger why.
I love that so much. I think it's all about that cognitive reframing and, just having that understanding. That's why I'm always big on saying, like, I have HS, but it doesn't have me, because I don't want to ever feel like it controls me. So, like, taking my power back as things like I sleep on white sheets now. And I do that proudly. Like, I wake up and I just be like, look at these white sheets, because I'm talking about it with someone else. I've always slept on dark sheets, and it wasn't because it was because I was embarrassed to look at it myself. And I think taking that power back and understanding, like, I have this, and I'm okay with waking up and whatever is there, and if there's nothing there, that's great too. So I think shifting that mindset is truly a game changer in the bigger puzzle piece here. So I love that. So we're almost wrapping up here. Future trends in alternative medicine. What emerging trends or new developments in alternative medicine do you believe will have a significant impact on the treatment of HS in the future?
I think a couple of trends that will have an impact, not just on HS, but in inflammatory conditions and really chronic illness in general. Number one, I think, is the quantum, even mind-body connection, how thoughts are actual particles and how that changes biology. I think that's going to be groundbreaking. I also think the field of environmental medicine, which I do a lot of, is getting way more sophisticated. So often people are, banging their head against the wall saying, why is nothing I'm doing helping me? I'm eating clean, I'm doing this and this, when really the problem is outside of you. And I always say, it's a cruel irony that when we don't feel well, we spend more time at home. But if there is some toxic exposure in your environment, like a chemical exposure, or I see a lot of mold or toxic bacteria from water-damaged environments, that heavily drives inflammation. And so I think that will be in the forefront.
Well, I think everybody will know what I will say. I think cannabinoids in plant medicine is going to be revolutionary for chronic inflammation in general, but I specifically, through my my peer group, was introduced to HS, and I said, well, okay, this makes a lot of sense. Let's focus on this patient population who is still searching for additional tools. Again, this is an effort to reduce the progression of disease to more advanced stages that would require surgery. And here I am, a surgeon, saying I'm going to try to reduce the number of surgeries in HS patients. But that's because, that's quality of life, that's pain and suffering, that's scarring, that's disfigurement, that's the mind-body disruption that happens, and looking at themselves and yourself in the mirror and saying, this, I'm different now. And of course, we want to extinct that limiting belief, because you're not. You're still you, and you're just as beautiful as you were when you were, in your native skin. But that be the case, I think, as we begin to see deregulation for THC, which is technically going to happen. I'm pretty sure it's going to happen, putting it on the schedule as a class 3, that CBD and these other cannabinoid and terpenoid and flavonoid, we didn't bring up flavonoids, but flavonoid substances to help regulate that homeostasis and bring that body back into equilibration and reduce that inflammation and then also palliate your pain is going to be groundbreaking and a game changer for the treatment of this disease.
And somewhat similar to that, I think something that is going to really emerge for HS and really for whole health altogether is another substance that has some great research in the past, but then was sort of demonized, and they're entheogens or psychedelics. And we're getting more research into psychedelics and how they can improve mind-body medicine and help people to restore balance in their lives. And we're seeing that the stigma is sort of being taken away as more research is being done. So I think that is going to be an area that is going to be hot in the future. And then the microbiome. We have spent so many years not knowing about all the bacteria that live on us and in our gut. And we are finally making huge strides and leaps and bounds in learning about how that impacts our immune system. And I think for HS, it's going to be important because we're seeing biologic medications on the market. There's a biologic that treats melanoma that gets your immune system to go kill your melanoma. How well it works is directly proportional to how much fiber is in your diet, because your immune system is trained by your gut and is super influenced by your gut. So I'm so excited for the days when we start looking at how your diet is also impacting how well your treatments and medications are going to work, because it's all related to your immune system. So, and it's not easy stuff to study. The microbiome is complicated. It's crazy. There are so many bugs that live on us, and some that we haven't even been able to grow or measure in the past, that now we're like, we didn't even know this existed. They're giving them all these crazy names. So I think that's going to be a huge area of research that's really going to help everything else in our lives fall into place and make more sense.
Love that. Love that. Great information. I feel like we have a whole bunch of questions. I think there's a mic out there. Do we have anyone that has a question? I think we have one right there.
Thank you. This is kind of like a question, also statement, comment in regards to the mind-body connection. I don't know if you are all aware or if anybody in the room is also aware of working with neurooptimal brain training, flotation therapy, trauma release exercises, or TRE on YouTube with Dr. David Berselli. Also getting into massage therapy to also help as another form of meditation, as well as energy work. I've also myself seen a lot of impact, and I encourage everybody to also look into that as well. And I was just wondering if you guys knew or utilize yourself any of those practices.
Yeah, actually, thank you for your question. We at the Wish Clinic actually are going to bring in virtual reality and augmented reality into the healing practice. We feel like incorporating an audiovisual stimulatory and augmented or virtual reality environment actually stimulates those neurological pathways to actually induce a more or anti-inflammatory and then a meditative physiological response for healing. So we're going to be offering both seated and walking experiences for patients specifically that have wounds. Our seated experience essentially is going to be a portfolio of collateral that patients will be sitting or laying and just watching and being sort of in a 3D virtual reality environment just for calm and meditation. So just another use of AI and these new innovations and technology to leverage the body's natural abilities to heal itself.
Yeah, I do. I love your question and your commentary, and I love that you have found help with those therapies. I know for myself, I ask every patient, what's going on for you emotionally? Tell me about your stress. Rate it in different areas of your life from 0 to 10. I ask about past traumatic experiences or even major losses. Trauma is really anything that overwhelms our capacity to cope in that moment. And there can be residual effects. There's a great book called The Body Keeps the Score, and it's explained that trauma is a physical substance that is stored in our body. I'm a big fan of Irene Lyons' work. She has a YouTube channel with a lot of free resources. But doing work to help reset the brain, the limbic system, and as you mentioned, trauma release to get that out of the body can be really helpful. I do feel like the patients that I work with where their care is co-managed with a counselor or some sort of trauma therapist, they do tend to get the best results. And I remember talking with Brindley when I first met her. We talked about how sometimes even just getting a diagnosis is a trauma. Living with uncertainty about what's going to happen, what is your future going to look like, or just being in pain or discomfort or embarrassment, those can be little traumas that build up over time. So I do believe that the emotional and mental health has to be addressed as well.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I practice Reiki, so I try to bring, and that's a form of energy healing. And my husband was the biggest skeptic when I was learning it and getting my training, but then since I've given him some treatments, now he's my biggest cheerleader, telling everybody, like, I know it sounds stupid, but it's amazing, it's a great experience, it will help you so much. And I think that's a good thing, is to sort of keep an open mind to some of these things that maybe we don't know as much about, or you haven't heard of, or it might seem a little strange on the surface. But it could be beneficial, because if I told you, all right, I have a new treatment that could help your HS, you'd go, sure, what is it? And then I go, oh, it's energy healing. You go, oh, I don't know about that. So keep an open mind, acupuncture. There's a lot of great things out there. And like you said, trauma is stored, and cognitive reframing, like we've taught our brains to view the world and to react to things the wrong way that's damaging us. So to sort of retrain that, and it's great to have someone helping you with your mental health, like everybody should. Everybody should have a mental health professional out there that you can help you out. They're just helping you be your best self. So we got to get rid of the stigma that goes along with mental health too.
Yeah, and this is actually really apropos to that. As a great plug for a behavioral analyst, I don't know how many people know what a behavioral analyst is? Raise your hand in the room. Okay, so how many people know or know of a child with autism? Okay, so all of those children should have a behavioral analyst in their life. The system takes away resources to BCBAs. Do we have a BCBA in the room? No. Our system takes away the resources for BCBAs at the age of 18 or 19, depending on your state. And so Medicaid programs do pay for and cover those services, but they go away when you're a teenager. And if your family or parent does not even know that these resources exist, you may not even get a diagnosis of neurodivergence or autistic spectrum until you're an adult. And then what happens? You don't get access to the mental health care for that. And it doesn't even have to be an autistic spectrum diagnosis. It can be any kind of pervasive behavior that's driven by a physiological mental health problem. So anxiety, depression, psychosis, which many times psychosis is driven, or anxiety and depression are driven by things that we put in our bodies or exposed to. So this was an opportunity for me to just say that there are mental health specialists out there that it would be cash pay, but as adults that we can get access to, and they're called board-certified behavioral analysts, who really help you reframe and learn how to deal with trauma. And we specifically work with them for our SIB patients, so patients that have obsessive compulsive behaviors that lead to self-injurious behavior. And so our BCBA actually helps these patients reframe and substitute their sometimes very subconscious picking with other things that are more adaptive and extinct the negative behavior that lead to chronic wounds, draining wounds. It's not HS per se specifically, but really help patients deal and cope with the trauma that is driving this wound syndrome or SIB type picture. So a BCBA, if you haven't looked them up, look them up. Could be something very helpful in your therapeutic journey and for your mental health to speak to someone that can give you some tools to help you cope with the trauma that you're dealing with.
Absolutely, yes. Does anyone else have any questions? Got one in the front. We got one in the back here. First up right here.
Hi. So you mentioned hallucinogenics. I was wondering, because there was a time where I partied a lot, and I would do shrooms, and I would wonder if that would like trigger flares for me. So do you have any information on that?
So a lot of the research so far has looked at sort of the mind-body connection with it. We do know that for the average person, there's not a lot of physical side effects other than a little nausea maybe at the beginning. So it doesn't seem to trigger inflammatory pathways, so it wouldn't be so much an inflammatory treatment, but it can help in addressing trauma and in going back through your life and sort of reframing. It's actually, hallucinogens are the most effective treatment for alcohol addiction, and the studies were done in Vancouver, Canada back in the 70s, and then when kind of became recreational, it became, you know, taboo and everything, but they're becoming a resurgence, and they're really studying it in a lot of disease states to see if it can help people to sort of rewire their brain. Because when you take a hallucinogen, you go back to sort of baby brain mode, and everything's interesting and fascinating and wonderful, and your brain isn't just filtering, is this safe, is this dangerous, is this safe, is this dangerous? And so it helps you to sort of relearn. That's why a lot of the Silicon Valley guys would do the microdosing, because it just helps your brain to work a little differently. So not saying do them now, but there's research out there. If you're interested in studies, you can always go on clinicaltrials.gov and put in hallucinogens or psychedelics or entheogens. Those are some of the names for them, and you might have a study near you. Some are to study people with no conditions in particular, just general population, and some are for if you have depression, anxiety, habitual behaviors. So there's a lot of research going on that I think is really going to help us to understand our brains better and to have some new options to help us deal with the stresses of the world.
All right, I think we have time for one more question.
Thank you. This question may be more so for you, Ashley, but either doctor can answer this. In regards to health insurance and naturopathic doctors, what has been your experience, and what advice would you have for patients that are interested in exploring that option but have insurance to cover it?
I love that question. So I mentioned earlier that different states regulate naturopathic doctors. Some states don't regulate them at all. In the state of Colorado, we are considered complementary care providers, and so we're not able to participate in the insurance model. So I do find that even if I provide a super bill with the insurance codes and the patient tries to submit for reimbursement, like 99% of the time, they're not covering it. Occasionally, I'm able to write a letter of medical necessity for things like supplements, and then it will be covered. I actually do see pretty good reimbursement coverage for people that have health sharing plans. Those are usually almost always covered. But in states where naturopathic doctors are more recognized, I should say. A lot of my colleagues do bill insurance. They work in a primary care type capacity. So these are states like Oregon, Washington State, California, Arizona, Vermont, Montana. So if you are able to access a naturopathic doctor in one of those states where there is licensure and they are able to participate in the insurance model, I do have a lot of colleagues that accept insurance. Some doctors may also do sliding scales depending on their practice, yeah.
And in addition to the health sharing, is HSA in that category as well for those of us that have health sharing?
Yeah, well, actually, I have patients at our practice that are, it's cash pay, but they're able to use their HSA to pay to use cash pay. So that's another way to somewhat use your insurance, yep.
Yeah, there's a company out there, and I just know this as a person that used the system and the benefit called WEX, W-E-X. If you're, of course, it's employer driven, so I don't think just general somebody that's not in the employed position would be able to get access. But look into it. They have a lifestyle savings account and a health savings account, of course, dependent savings account as well. But yeah, so it's empowering you to save and contribute and defer employee wages for your health, wellness, and your lifestyle. And so that, depending on the way the plan is built, will give you access to indies or and then there's a lot. Believe me, insurance is not easy to work with as a physician. Many of us are going to direct pay sliding scale models and getting out of the insurance business. because it just delays access. It actually delays care. Insurance companies are kind of dictating what we can and cannot provide. So we're empowering ourselves to actually move away from insurance and then, again, have a partnership with you from a financial standpoint to finance your health, because we obviously an ethical provider would be there to provide you access, and I wouldn't say for nothing. There is some laws that say you can't really, unless you're particularly modeled as a nonprofit, you can't really offer health care for free. But yeah, it's going to take some homework, and I can't say here in this city, who would take cash for or at a discount or whatever. But there are some other financial mechanisms with physicians that can benefit you.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for an amazing panel. Wow, give them some applause. Give them some applause.